Everyone keeps saying the same thing. Just wait. Mass adoption is coming. The next partnership will change everything. The next regulation will send XRP soaring. But then weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And many investors are left asking the exact same question. When will XRP finally move? It's a fair question. Ripple has continued expanding its business. The XRP Ledger keeps adding new features. More institutions are exploring blockchain technology than ever before. Yet, despite all that progress, many people look at the price chart and wonder why none of it seems to matter. So is the market ignoring XRP, or is something much bigger happening behind the scenes? The truth is, one of the biggest mistakes investors make is assuming that good news should immediately lead to a higher price. In traditional markets, that doesn't always happen. And in crypto, it's even more complicated. Price doesn't move simply because a company announces a partnership. It doesn't move just because lawmakers introduce new legislation. And it doesn't move overnight simply because the technology improves. Markets care about something much deeper. They care about demand. That's the piece many conversations leave out. There's a huge difference between positive headlines and actual buying pressure. Those two things are often treated as if they're the same, but they're not. Think about it this way. Imagine a brand new airport is built in your city. The runways are finished. The terminals are ready. The technology is world-class. But if no airlines are flying passengers through that airport yet, the infrastructure alone doesn't create activity. The same principle applies to financial networks. Building the infrastructure is only the first step. The real question is, when does that infrastructure begin generating enough real-world usage to create sustained demand? That's where the XRP conversation becomes much more interesting, because many investors focus almost entirely on announcements, partnership, ETF rumors, court victories, regulations, but the market is asking a different question. Will these developments actually increase the need to buy and use XRP? Until you understand that difference, it's easy to become frustrated every time another piece of positive news fails to move the price. So what actually moves XRP's price? The short answer is one word: demand. Not headlines, not speculation, and not even adoption by itself. Let's imagine two different scenarios. In the first, a major financial institution announces it's building on the XRP Ledger. Investors get excited, social media explodes, and everyone expects XRP to rally. But if that institution isn't buying or using XRP in a meaningful way, the announcement alone may have very little impact on long-term price. Now consider a second scenario. Instead of just announcing a partnership, that same institution begins processing billions of dollars in cross-border payments using XRP as a bridge asset. Suddenly, there's real demand for liquidity. XRP isn't just part of the conversation anymore. It's part of the transaction itself. That's a completely different situation. This is why it's important to separate ecosystem growth from XRP demand. They're related, but they're not identical. The XRP Ledger can support tokenized assets, stablecoins, decentralized applications, and many other use cases. All of those developments strengthen the ecosystem. But the market eventually asks one simple question: how much XRP is actually being used? That's the difference between potential and realized demand. Another factor many investors overlook is timing. Financial institutions don't replace global payment systems overnight. Banks test new technology. They run pilot programs. They evaluate compliance. They integrate with existing infrastructure. Only after those steps do they begin scaling usage. That process can take years, not because the technology doesn't work, but because the financial system moves cautiously. This is where many XRP holders become frustrated. They see positive news every month and expect the price to react immediately. When it doesn't, they assume something must be wrong. But markets don't always reward future potential right away. Sometimes they wait until that potential becomes measurable reality. History has shown this in many industries. The companies that built the internet didn't become trillion-dollar businesses overnight. Cloud computing wasn't adopted in a single year. Artificial intelligence spent years developing before becoming mainstream. New technologies often go through long periods where progress is real, but price action doesn't fully reflect it yet. That doesn't guarantee XRP will follow the same path, but it does explain why technology adoption and market valuation often move on different timelines. So if partnerships, regulations, and infrastructure aren't enough by themselves, what specific events could create the kind of demand that investors are waiting for? So when will XRP finally move? The honest answer is this: not because of one headline, not because of one partnership, and not because of one piece of legislation. XRP is likely to move when multiple factors begin working together. Imagine it like building a fire. One match won't keep it burning. But add dry wood, oxygen, and enough heat, and suddenly the fire becomes self-sustaining. The same idea applies to XRP. Real price momentum could require several things happening at once. More institutions using XRP for liquidity, higher transaction volume across the XRP ledger, clearer regulations in major financial markets, and most importantly, consistent demand that exceeds the available supply in the market. That's very different from reacting to a single news story. This is why experienced investors often focus less on daily headlines and more on long-term trends. They ask questions like, is real usage increasing? Are more businesses solving real problems with XRP? Is demand becoming sustainable instead of speculative? Those questions matter far more than whether the latest announcement causes a short-term price spike. The reality is that nobody, not YouTubers, analysts, or even Ripple, can tell you the exact day XRP will make its next major move. Anyone claiming to know the exact timing is making a prediction, not stating a fact. What we can do is watch the indicators that have historically mattered: adoption, liquidity, utility, and demand. Because over the long run, markets tend to reward assets that create real economic value. So instead of asking, when will XRP finally move, maybe the better question is, what needs to happen before it moves? Understanding that difference won't tell you tomorrow's price, but it will help you separate meaningful progress from temporary hype. And that's exactly how long-term investors make better decisions. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more videos that explain why XRP moves, instead of chasing every headline, subscribe to OG John XRP Insights. Here, we focus on facts, not hype, so you can understand the bigger picture behind every XRP story.